What's up, y'all, and welcome to Durag Thoughts. My name is Trevor Went. I'm a visual artist raised in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I make art to challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And Durag Thoughts is a space where we talk about topics and themes, things like that challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And if you paid attention to some of the preview material that has been coming out, you'll know that this season of Durag Thoughts is about my series, City of God, which has started this week. And so if you haven't seen the first episode, Fear Lane, you should probably pause this video and go back and watch that because you're going to get some spoilers. But today we're going to talk about some of the themes and just have a conversation surrounding some of those as we walk through Durag Thoughts for the first kind of episodic episode of this season. So my conversation partner for today is the communications manager at Free the Girls, which is a nonprofit that focuses on empowering women who are survivors of sex trafficking. And she's also one of my closest friends. I say that she is a master baker on the low, or a master baker in training. Someone that continues to teach me about love, hospitality, serving, just being there for your peoples. She always shows up for me regardless of where I'm at or what I'm doing. And as you can tell, she's showing up for me right now, being a part of this series. And I'm super excited for y'all to meet my good friend, one of my closest friends, Brittany Newton. What's up, Brittany?
What's up, Trav?
You know, chilling, grinding every day, working on this project. Okay, so let me give some people the background story. I'm not going to give a ton of background because y'all need to consume this art for yourselves, but just kind of the background story of this track and what's happening. Basically, I had planned to go to seminary out in Canada, and I got kicked out of Canada. Didn't work because I didn't have enough money to go to school. And so basically, like, they turned me away at the border. And, you know, this was at the tail end of a bunch of other stuff. If you paid attention to my life 5 years ago, you might have heard about the journey, the westward summer, you know, very big moment in my life, and a massive sponsored road trip that I did. You could probably just go search the westward summer and you'll find some stuff from that. The westward summer Trevor went, and you can dig a little bit, but basically stuff turned out way differently than I expected at the end. I did expect, like, potentially that I wasn't going to be able to go to the school, but I didn't expect stuff to happen the way that it happened. And I had a friend who went with me, a close friend, and he flew back to the East Coast, and then I was alone in my car. I'd driven all the way out to the West Coast, all the way to the Pacific Northwest and into Canada. And then I was going to start my drive back to the East Coast and pulled into a church parking lot because I found out, like, it's not really that easy to sleep in your car because there's not a lot of legal places to sleep in your car. So if you don't know an area and know where you can park and not be messed with or whatever, like, it's kind of difficult. And so I figured if I parked in a church parking lot, that'd be like the highest likely place where I wasn't going to get, you know, a ton of backlash for doing that, for sleeping in my car. And I said, I'll just get out by a Sunday morning service. And so, yeah, I did that. I slept in my car, and yeah, this track kind of begins with me waking up. So yeah, super interesting space of time. One of the things I really want to talk about with this is, like, just fear, anxiety, and just some of the things like that. For you, Brittany, are like fear, anxiety kind of commonplaces for you at all in life?
I would say absolutely not. Not until recently. I've dealt with some anxiety more in the past 2 years, but fear is not a thing that I'm super familiar with. I don't base a lot of decisions on fear, and don't feel like fear moves me that much.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's like, for me, you know, I don't feel like fear is a big thing for me, even though this whole episode is about, like, the whole episode of this series kind of centers around this track that's straight up called Fear Lane. But, like, it's not a thing for me. Like I don't really feel anxiety, and I know that people kind of clinically can struggle with anxiety and things like that. I have no aversion to the reality of people having that legitimate struggle within their lives, but it's never been a thing for me. And I think moments like that in that piece are jarring because it's like, I don't know, I consider myself a person with pretty good instincts. And so, I mean, there's definite things that scare me. I don't like squirrels. I don't like a lot of woodland animals in general.
The great outdoors.
The outdoors are fine-ish. I mean, like
all the animals are.
I mean, here's the thing. If I could hike a mountain and not have to interact with any of the weird little animals, that'd be great. Like, I'm sitting here trying to get the views. I don't want a little raton running across the ground in front of me. I don't want to see a snake. I don't want to see a snake skin. I don't want to see, a frog. Like, all them things, if they just kept to themselves and stayed, 100 yards or more away from me, that'd be great, But that's the thing about the outdoors. You ain't got no control, and then bugs be on you and stuff, and don't nobody like bugs. I mean, yeah, I guess there are people who like bugs, but I'm not one of those people. And so, yeah, it's like there are things that scare me. Those are among them, I'm not gonna be one of these people who like climb skyscrapers with GoPros and then hang on with one foot and stuff. I'm like, you testing the Lord, you stupid. Like, I don't play games like that. Why would I play with my life like that? I don't need that rush to know I'm alive. I know I'm alive by like the fact that I'm breathing and I'm functioning with people and, stuff feels pretty decent. But yeah, I don't really get that stuff. But yeah, there are things that scare me. But when it comes to like life decisions and stuff like that, I'm not a person who's like, I don't know. I don't get real uptight about a whole lot of things. I don't know. I guess now though that you say like in the last 2 years you've had some anxiety, that does make me think like, I've like come to a place where like, I have more anxiety in getting on airplanes than I ever had. I never was bothered by it. Like, so to kind of lay stuff out for people, if you watch the beginning of this piece, you'd see that this piece is dedicated, like this project and its entirety is dedicated to my good friend Matthew Newton, who died of leukemia a couple years back, 2 years ago, who was Brittany's husband. And there was something like, it was like Matthew's death for me spurred on this feeling when it comes to airplanes, like, because I was just more aware that death is a thing. Like, I think it was that. It's just that like death being a reality, that I'm actually faced with it, that someone that I know that was in their early 30s died, and I'm like, what the freak, I'm at that point, I'm 25. Yeah, I would have been like 25, 26 maybe, and so I'm like, really, it's like I'd seen death in other capacities. My grandma died that same year, but my grandma was old, like she was in her 80s, and so it's like, to me, it's like she lived a long life, and so there's not as much of like a reckoning with those things.
There's an expectancy there.
Yeah, there's totally. And like my grandma, she would like she wasn't like leaving her room a bunch, and I know what happens when like you get older and you don't work your body, like you're gonna atrophy, and so it was sad, but it wasn't like this jarring experience because of the expectancy. And so like, there's been a greater awareness of, and I guess we've never talked about this because I don't like it like airplanes bug me out because I don't have no control no more. Like, and I know that like plane crashes are like super rare, but airplanes bug me out because I'm putting my life into somebody else's hands. And like if something goes down, I literally have no way to save myself. Like there's no way that I can do anything really that's going to like up my likelihood of survival. But if it, like, people are like, well, car crashes are like way more likely. I'm like, yeah, but I have my hands on the wheel. Like, I can choose what time of day I'm driving. If a drunk driver comes flying, I might at least have the ability to say, F, this person's flying at me. I can like hit the steering wheel, like, or hit the gas pedal and like, you know, make them hit the back of my car rather than hit the, you know, the door, slam into the door or whatever. And so there, like, the reality of like it not being something I can really have control over, it's just, and then especially if some turbulence starts happening, it's like, oh Lord, here we go again. But it hasn't like kept me from doing it because I've still gotten on planes a bunch of times.
Yeah. Do you think any of that like control issues also comes from Matthew's death? Just out of curiosity. I mean, he had no control over it. You had no control over it. Like, coming to terms with your lack of control and more than just your own life.
Yeah, I mean, I would say control in that capacity. I would have to do some soul searching to think if I feel, I mean, because I'm generally pretty self-aware and I don't consider myself a control freak. Like, even with this project, you know, there are other people who are involved in it, and there's a level of meticulousness that I did, like for instance, when it came to the score of this project, like, I was very meticulous as to, oh, that ain't it, oh, I'm hearing this right here and that needs to come up. But I would just call that being detail oriented. But I definitely wasn't like, here are 6 tracks, Tayshawn, you need to listen to these and then make this like this. I gave him influences, like, okay, this is some of the stuff I'm thinking, this is where my headspace kind of is, but I allowed him to craft a vision because I trusted him. And it's like, this is kind of like, I pitched the vision, but in terms of like how that actually played out, I was like, he's gonna do a better job than me. I don't know music like that. And so, and then like you come to a space like even the filming of this project.
But that's like a willful giving up of control.
Explain what you mean by that, because I don't really know what that term means.
And it's like you're actively giving up control, and there's control in that. There's like a sense of control when it's your decision to give up the control.
Yeah. So in space, so give me an example of a space that's different than that.
The airplane that you're gonna fly in.
Okay, so an airplane. But see,
choice to not have control. If you could have control, you would take it.
If I could have control, I would take it.
If there was a way for you to have control in that situation.
Well, I don't know. Well, okay, so I'm thinking willful giving up because like, well, no, because I don't want to control over aircraft because I'm gonna kill us before a pilot would kill us. But I mean, like, I wouldn't be like, if it's a train, I'm not really.
Why is the fear there? I'm gonna dig into your fear of planes now.
Because I'm in the air. And it's like, it's just like, yo, this joint could go down. And it's like, you know, even though this person might be the best, like they're better versed than me, I don't know what they've been doing that day. And so like, I don't know how prepared this person is. What sort of like split second decision that they're going to make that's going to be bugged out. Like Kobe Bryant flew in helicopters for all his time, right? You know, it was his primary mode of transportation to get around LA because LA traffic was terrible and he wanted to see his daughters play and stuff like that. And then he goes up this one time and this dude has like multiple points where he can like make a decision not to fly through this fog and continues to make a bad decision, then crashes into a side of a mountain and kills this, you know, this whole family of people, like multiple families of people. Plus Kobe Bryant and his daughter, you know, Gigi, one of his daughters. And it's like, I'm entrusting some, like, to love it all is to be vulnerable, right? Like this, this idea of like, I have to like leave myself open for hurt. Like there's an aspect of that, but it's like, I'm letting myself be vulnerable to something that's like we are up to the elements. Like we are up in the air. Like that dude could have flown that helicopter easy in clear conditions, but now there's some challenges. And so then what does this look like? And so it's just like, it's a more risky, like there's higher stakes, right? It's like, I don't know, like interpersonal relationships. I'm trying to think, because like, I guess you can control people if you're in interpersonal relationships or whatever. Like you can get manipulative and stuff, but I don't find myself being manipulative with nobody. It's like, yo, because I don't even like taking up people's time for real. Like if I waste people's time, I feel bad about that. Like if like something goes wrong on set or something like that, and I've like wasted a chunk of people's time, like it really kind of guts me. And so, and there's a sense of me where I consider it a privilege to like spend time with people, with people helping me. And that's the part of that's probably Enneagram 4 individualist nature. It's like, I would just rather do stuff by myself because I know I'm always going to be there and I'm going to execute as much time, and I don't necessarily have to have everything together, in order, or like have a clear, super tight, honed in vision planned out to be able to like leave the openness to make stuff pop, or to make like the work of art that needs to develop over time, rather than someone being like, all right, we need to do this in 30 minutes. And I'm like, whoa, I usually shoot this stuff for like 3 hours. And so, like leaving space open for expectancy and things like that. I don't know. That's where my headspace kind of sits within that.
I just think there's a lot of fear based off of different versions of lack of control.
In the space of like, like in the sense that like there are different types of control that you can have, and some might not cause you fear, but others do. Well, and I think it's a risk-based situation too, because like, I mean, even like, all right, it's like all the memes and stuff that you be seeing, at least I be seeing, because Black Twitter be like this. You see white people like up on mountains and stuff, and like on the tip of something and like hanging off by their like fingertips and stuff. I'm like, that's some white people stuff. Like we don't do that. like that is not it. And or like I saw this joint the other day where these white dudes were playing basketball on like a freaking mountain ledge. Like they had brought like a hoop up there, and like had drawn out like lines, and they're sitting there and they're like playing one-on-one. You can tell they're being like kind of careful and stuff, but they're balling on top of this joint. And I'm like, that's some white people stuff. And so, but
I mean, to face your fears, you have to have fears in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, those people are probably pretty fear driven.
Yeah, I'm not facing them fears at all. Them fears can, it's like, cause there's all right, there's like a difference between like there's healthy fears, right? There's certain things in life where it's like for instance, you are not gonna catch my black ass in the middle of the ocean with just a light vest. Like I might be in some protected area or something like that. But if we talking about like wild ocean where it's the shark's house, as that woman on that video said, it's like, I don't know what's in the ocean. I don't know what's going on in there. And so like, there's a level, it's like, I like the ocean. I'm a beach kid. I grew up, most of my life in Virginia Beach. I enjoy the ocean. I enjoy what it looks like. I enjoy photographs of it. There are a lot of things I like about the ocean, but I also know that the ocean can kill you. Like the ocean has, like, we don't know most of it. We don't know what most of it look like, most of what's in it, and then like you see, I mean, you in situations where like you see these people like big wave surfers and stuff in these waves that are as tall as a skyscraper, it feels like, and they just on them joints. Like, I know that wave can murder me. Like, I'm dead. It's over in a like, that's what that space is like, right? And so there's a healthy fear that, like, yo, maybe I should respect the ocean because the ocean might F me up today. Like, it's like, there are rip currents. Like, there are cross currents. Like, there are sharks. And it's like, it's like, there's a level of this where it's like, I cannot control certain things, and it's not going to keep me I might be concerned a little bit when I'm, getting out here in the ocean, getting a little boogie board or something. It's been a long time since I've been on the ocean with the boogie board, but if I'm out there with the little boogie board situation, I might go out a little bit to go catch a little wave, or, in the times that I've like tried out surfing, I might go out deep enough to like, catch a little wave or two, but I'm not going to be out there, I'm not going to be going to Cali or something in some big wave spots and be messing with that joint, because, I don't play with stuff like that. I'm like, all right, there's certain things where you just got to respect it a little bit, have a nice day. Like, I ain't gonna be one of them people with the knives, who like stab between their fingers, like going back and forth and stuff, because they like the thrill of it. It's like, the thrill seeking stuff is just outrageous to me. Like, I don't need those sort of rushes. That's not something that I need within my life. But that's how I think about this stuff. What about you when it comes to fears? Like, what are there healthy fears for you? Like,
I think there has to be. There have to be there have to be healthy fears for everyone, I would think. Fear is what keeps us safe, just biologically. Like, that's the emotion that keeps us from, like you said, I don't know, sticking your hand on a hot stove, and I don't know, not going into the ocean when you know your own incompetence, or I should say your own skill level. But I don't know what mine would be. Like, I'm more of a thrill seeker, I think, than you are, but not out of like wanting to face my fears, more so out of interest in either getting that view or like, I want to skydive. I think that sounds amazing to me.
Not a chance in life will I ever do that. Not a chance in life.
I for sure want to, but it's out of like, I want to know what that feeling is like that feeling of like that level of falling. I don't know how else to put that, but like, I want to know what that feels like. But it has nothing to do with like facing a fear. I don't feel afraid of it at all. I just feel like, well, I want to know what that feels like. It's more curiosity to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been accused of having a lack of fear for my own personal safety. Or fear for my own personal safety. I don't take that super seriously. I pick up hitchhikers and I leave my doors unlocked, and I should be telling all of.
I'm about to say, why are you saying this on the internet? We are not going to say where Brittany lives, like, at all. This information will not be given. Look, there's some crazos on the internet. You got to chill with that sort of information. But that's also a Tennessee thing, like East Tennessee thing, which is super bugged out to me. Like, there are too many cats out there who just be leaving doors unlocked. I had when I moved into seminary like a couple years back, I had to have a talk with my roommate at one point. I was like, bruh, you be leaving these doors unlocked. He's like, yeah, it's just how it is. I'm like, I'm black. This is different from me. Like, I've grown up in situations where I can't do this. Like, it's like, I got too much expensive like gear in here. I got photo equipment. I got records, like, I got record players. Like, I ain't trying to do all this. And so, like, we had to come to this understanding. It's like, yeah, you going to lock this door, like, we can't do this. And so, he had to get a duplicate key, and we had to change that situation up. And then, like, people were also like of the mindset of like leaving their car doors unlocked. And then somebody rolled up into the daggone, campus neighborhood and straight, swiped some stuff from some people's cars, and they were all upset. And I'm like, you left your doors unlocked. That's on you, cuh. it's sad or whatever, but it's like, this thiefus is among all places. But that's just me. But that is from some for sure East Tennessee stuff. I knew multiple people throughout my collegiate experience and then after college, for the couple of years I was still out there, who absolutely never locked their doors the entire time. And it ain't even like y'all be living on fields. Like, it's not like people are living, I got 10 acres to the left to my next neighbor. It's like people are next door to you. I just don't get it. But I would say that you're definitely a bigger thrill seeker than me, because I definitely ain't jumping out no plane. I'm out here talking about like the fear of flying on a plane, and you out here talking about jumping out of planes.
Yeah, but I definitely have some photos on my Instagram of me standing a little close to the edge of, drop-offs of huge rocks. So I'm one of those white people.
Yeah, that's like, all right, so on the Westward Summer, me and my dude Hunter, we were in what part? Yosemite. We were in Yosemite, and I've got a photo of this. But there's this ledge at Yosemite at this certain point that like looks towards Half Dome, which is, if you have, OS X, Mac OS X. Actually, I don't know if it's OS X, but it's whatever Mac OS Yosemite is. It's got a picture of Half Dome as one of the backdrops, like the backgrounds. And so there's this rock from like one of these points where you can overlook and look straight at Half Dome. There's this like rock that's just a little cliff situation, and it's not wide at all. And it straight up says, like, has a sign that says, "Hey, cuh, don't do this." And it's like people be falling from this and dying. Don't do this. And so Hunter decides, I'm trying to do that. And I'm like, that's some white people stuff. And like, sure enough, there were like people who were like out there doing it, like walking to the edge of it and stuff. And like Hunter wanted to experience this. And I'm like, I don't understand wanting to experience death or near death. I'm personally perfectly fine not experiencing that. And so he walks out to the edge of this thing, and he's alive. He lived to tell the story. But there was a point where like this other dude walks out there on this narrow thing, and there was no communication among them or something. And I'm pretty sure he like walked around Hunter. And this is not a platform where there's a lot of space. Like, this is a rock, and Hunter is sitting there like he's not in running shoes or anything. He's in some boots, and I don't know if they're boots that like really grip the ground or nothing. And I guess they must have been, because he didn't fall. But I was like, that was one of the most sketchy things I've ever seen. It made for a decent image, but at the same time, it was like, this cat was like walking around that joint and like putting Hunter at risk as well. I was like, there's no part of me that wants any part of that.
I think more like I said, I don't really have fears around that. More curiosity around things like that. I think sometimes my fears are more, I don't know what you would call it, subtle fears, or they're more attached to emotion than the outside world.
Like what?
Like, I think, so that it is interesting. You mentioned your Enneagram number. I'm a 5, so I'm in the fear triad. Like the fear, the head triad is also the fear triad.
For people who don't know what the Enneagram is a personality like archetyping system. And so there are different numbers, 1 to 9, and Brittany is a 5. Continue.
No, you're good. So as a 5, like, apparently I withdraw from fear. And a lot of that has to do with, for me specifically, has to do with the feeling of overwhelm. So if I think I get afraid of being overwhelmed, more so by emotion than anything else. And I think that's why I've dealt with anxiety the last 2 years after losing Matthew, not knowing how deep my pit can go. And so when I start going into like a depressive state, that's when fear kind of takes hold of me, because I don't know how deep that depression is going to get. And I don't know how overwhelming those feelings are going to be. So like the fear of that has me retreating, has me withdrawing from all feelings and all people, so to not have to deal with it. Like I go into my thinking space, or I go into a thinking space, I should say, rather than a feeling space, as a form of withdrawal from that fear.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess in general, like, I mean, there is some spectrum of control for everyone, right? Like, like you might not, like any certain person might not be a full-on control freak, as in they need to be an individual who is controlling every aspect of every situation at all times. You know, the bridezillas of the world and the momzillas of the world, you know, who are trying to control every aspect of a wedding are good examples. But at the same time, there's also the tension of, we all want some form of control in some regard. Like, nobody wants their body to just be totally controlled by someone else and taken advantage of, or whatever that would look like. You know, one of the roughest feelings, like, you know, coming from someone who wrestled all the way through college, when you can't get someone off of you, like in a wrestling match, and they're like smothering you. There was one time, this is the only time this has ever happened to me in my entire career, you know, up through all the time that I wrestled. I was wrestling this one match, and it was at like a super region duel, which was like we wrestled, you know, as our full team against people who were within our super region in college. And we went back to back to back to back. I think we had like 5 matches that day or something. And so we're wrestling this, you know, duel tournament thing. I guess it wasn't a tournament. It was just a big duel. Everyone's getting together to do multiple duels in a day type thing. And I wrestled this one guy who was ranked top 10 in the country, and he was kicking my behind. He was beating the crap out of me. And I couldn't get up off bottom. He was just like, you know, I think he was just smashing my face into the mat and stuff, just tearing me up. And I never realized until that moment why people will bite in wrestling at times, because he had like been throwing these cross faces, which is where you know, take your arm and you throw it. When you do a good crossface, you're really supposed to put like your thumb kind of like this, and then you push it against the person's nose, and you know, you're yanking their face. And so like, if you're actually cross-facing someone properly, their neck kind of cranks back and pushes away. So it's really, really uncomfortable. So he's like cross-facing me or something, and I got out of it, and he's trying to cross-face me again. And I remember there was a point where like my mouth opened up and then like went like towards his arm or something. And then I stopped, and I like had to tell myself no, and then return back to wrestling. But I realized in that moment why people bite at times in wrestling is because you get to such a point of desperation, you get flight or fight feelings start happening, and your body is signaling, do whatever you can to get the hell out of this situation. Like, you have to do whatever you can to get out of Dodge. And that was the first time I had ever experienced something like that in my entire wrestling career. No matter how good of a person I've wrestled, you know, I wrestled people higher ranked than that person. That never happened to me. And it was just a reality of when you're at your wit's end, you know, stuff starts happening that you didn't even know were a part of you. And which is an interesting tie-in back to this narrative, was I started feeling these emotions that I was like, what the heck is this? you know, and the larger scale, there is some way that it did come back around, which was not surprising, which I'll let y'all, you know, invest in this art and figure it out as it comes out. I'm not gonna really give you a full breakdown of what I was saying and how that plays out, but I was experiencing these feelings like I don't know what this feels like. I mean, I had just jumped in a car for a month and drove across the country. Like, I had just gotten this whole joint sponsored. I had just gotten, you know, all these doubters who told me I couldn't do this thing say, "Ha, take it." Like, I did this ish and you said I couldn't, and now I'm on the road for free, seeing, you know, who gets to do a full West Coast road trip for a month ever in their life. You know, there's not a lot of people who've had an experience like that. And I crafted that experience. I built the vision. I did all the work to make it happen. I contacted all the companies and people surrounded me, right? You know, I made the videos. I did all the work, right? And so it ended up working out for me. But yeah, I just think about you know, kind of wrapping back into, you know, some of the conversations surrounding stuff is like, I was at a point of like a wit's end. Like, I had come to this kind of pinnacle point, but it was also like a super low point because I didn't know what was next. And you can hear that kind of illustrated in what I'm talking about. And, you know, for you, with the growth of like anxiety in the last 2 years, it was because you had come to a place that was a rock bottom place, you know? It's something you never saw coming. And even for me with the airplane stuff, it was like, I didn't know. My first flight ever was an international flight. My first flight ever was like across the ocean into Germany, you know? And then from there into Central Asia. So my first experience were like long flight, like it's a long flight, and it was overseas. And yet, with me flying domestically, you know, to Los Angeles or something, or even Florida, you know, it was like, whew. And there was one point where it was like, all right, I woke up, there was one flight I was on, and this plane started getting some turbulence, and like, the pilot won't really communicating. And I was like, yo, what is happening on this plane? And I had fallen asleep, and I literally woke up and looked across the aisle to my homie Nick, and we both had like woken up. I was like, yo, what is happening right now? And then the pilot, like the way they landed was just like they smacked the runway. It was super rough. It was a super rough landing. I was like, these situations are not ideal. And so, but it was something that unearthed from me at my wit's end. And it's just like, you learn a lot about your character when the bottom falls out, I think. Learn a lot about who you are, and learn about a lot about what you think and what you believe and different things like that when stuff's not going perfectly. You know, it's easy. I mean, it's like the adage of like, it's easy to trust God when everything's going your way. You know, it's those sort of ideas. So I don't know. It's interesting.
It is. I was going to say, you mentioned earlier with fear, there's the fight or flight response, but there's actually fight, flight, or freeze. And I think I go to freeze sometimes. At least feeling wise, I go to freeze. You talked about like, have to do something to get out of a situation, but that's not everybody's response to fear. Some people's fear response is to freeze in it.
Yeah, they just like shut down and just hope it'll be over.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting. It's actually another tie-in, now that I'm thinking about, to what you were saying about, maybe a little off topic, but you were talking about that fear that you had of basically being overpowered and not being able to get out, like not being able to get up. And it, like, the first thing I thought of when you said that, I was like, that's how a lot of women feel around big men, large men. There's a fear there just because it's easy for us to be overpowered, or easier. I shouldn't say easy, but easier for us, or at least we feel it's easier for us to be overpowered in situations like that. I would say that would be one of my fears. If I now that we've talked this far, I'm realizing that that's been one of my fears most of my life. Being in a car alone with a man, even from a young age, I've had that fear. And I think it comes from the fear of being like knowing how easy it would be to overpower me and for me to not be able to get out. But again, a lot of times my response to that isn't fight or flight, but it is freeze.
Yeah.
And the argument is made often towards women who freeze. Like, why didn't you scream out? Why didn't you, in terms of like rape cases and sexual assault cases, why didn't you act, basically? Why didn't you choose fight or flight? And I think it's just now, or it's just more recently becoming common knowledge that there is a third response to fear, and that is freeze.
Yeah, the total shutdown totally makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's interesting. Like one of my homegirls who actually wrestled at King with me, you know, she didn't wrestle on the men's team. She was on the women's team. Although they're, you know, in high school before, there has been this kind of like this surge of women's wrestling programs. Girls were wrestling on guys' teams. But yeah, so this homegirl wrestled, but she had posted something. It was like a story. It was a story post or something. She was like, it was like a repost from someone that basically said, guys like joking about like, oh, you wrestle, I bet I could take you, or something like that. She's like, it's not cute, it's scary. Like, because in reality, I think there is, you know, it's like I'm like all the women in my household are exponentially smaller than me. You know, it's like there's a reality of knowing like there are not. It's like I'm just I'm 5'11". I'm 5'11". I wrestled for a long time in my life, and I'm pretty aware that, like, you know, like that one, I'm not of the top percentile of dudes, right, in terms of like size and height or whatever. Like I'm 100, 80, something, like somewhere between 180, 185 pound dude, 5'11". Not like I'm not a tiny person. And I'm not a medium-sized person. Like I'm on the larger men's size, but I'm not, 220 pounds of muscle. I'm not a football player. I'm not a basketball player. I'm not 6'6" and, massive or whatever. But I'm also very aware that, like, there's no one in my household, even like my brother, who's like comparable in terms of like height to me, that could take me. I'm very aware of that. But I'm also very aware that, like, the women in my household are very much smaller, like very much so smaller than me. And it would be a very different experience of like if they, like, them needing to get out of a situation with someone my size. Like I've said to people before, I'm like, yo, you have to have measures to like take somebody out. Like, I don't care if it's pepper spray. I don't care if it's like, a taser. Like, you gotta have something, because in reality, it's like, I'm well aware of what it looks like to control someone from a wrestling standpoint, and it's like, if someone's big enough, like, there comes a point where technique don't matter as much, even in wrestling, right? It's like, if there's somebody, it's like, yeah, you can, if you're strong enough and like you're well versed enough, you can get out of a pretty decent number of situations for sure. But like, a college wrestler at heavyweight and then a me at 174 is what I wrestled at. Them dudes, even though they slower than me, and even if I had more technique and more things I could use in my arsenal, most of the time I'm gonna get my behind whooped. Like, I got thrown across the room one time by a heavyweight in the college room. Like, my coach made me wrestle him. All of a sudden I find myself flying into a light switch. Like, because he's just way bigger than me, way stronger than me. It's like, you can't take those people to task. You can't, like, you gotta fight asymmetrically. You can't do the same things with them that you would do with a 174 pounder, those sort of things. And so it's like, I'm well aware of, yo, size is a thing. And so even with somebody who's like, who wrestled, like girls that I know who wrestled and wrestled longer than me in some cases, this is still the same situation. Still the same situation of like fear or whatever. I mean, you know, and so yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense to me that that would be a space of fear for you and for most women, unless you're somebody like Amanda Nunes, who is a UFC champion who knocks everyone out and has some heavy behind hands. Like there's certain ladies who, and I guess it goes back to like, like certain, I mean, it's not the same. Everyone doesn't have the same fears. I imagine those ladies still have a level of like, if there's a heavyweight UFC fighter who wants to do something, it's like they don't have the size and abilities to take someone out like that. But if like most random dudes on the street tried to do something to them, they gonna rip your arm out of socket because they have that jujitsu ability or they have that boxing ability to knock your chin off your face. They have those abilities to get out of those situations. And so, but there's still the recognition that there's like inevitably a size disadvantage in some category, and recognizing that there's certain spaces that there is still weakness. It's deep.
One of the, not to get political, but one of the Trump accusers was, I can't remember who had been quoted as saying that she packed one of the hardest punches. And he's a boxer. I can't remember which boxer, and I'm probably going to get made fun of for that because it's a big name. I just can't remember who, and I don't want to get it wrong. But talking, because she was training, I don't know if it was just for personal reasons or not, but she was boxing at the time of her assault. Like
from Trump? Yeah.
But I mean, she didn't use any of those moves on him. But it's just like, she talks about that fear that she had. She froze. I feel pretty positive that's the story. I just read it recently, or just reread it recently. And she did more of a freeze than a fight, knowing that she could pack a punch.
Yeah. I mean, I think because even some of that stuff, it's like you have to unlearn your own tendencies. Like, I mean, there's like muscle memory and stuff that, if you train through a scenario enough, you spend years on training through a scenario, and if like this happens, you do this, there's like, you have to do so much work to kind of overcome those things. I mean, it's the reasons why, like, there's times where like people will put a hand on my shoulder, like in some form of aggressive manner. Like, it's different if it's just like, someone like lightly touches my shoulder or something. But if I feel like force against my shoulder and like someone like grabbing from the front, my first instinct is to, do like an arm drag in wrestling, where I would basically, wax off, Mr. Miyagi style. And then once the hand is dropping, you grab it with the other arm, and then you grab like under their tricep and you pull them by. And it's what happens. It's like, there's certain situations where like people have grabbed me just playing around, but like I have a decade of muscle memory from wrestling, and all of a sudden, like, you're in the air. I'm like, yo, you started it. I'm sorry. Like, this is just, it's the way my body reacts in some of those situations.
Yeah, that makes me want to ask you, because I still think fear for a lot of us is a huge immobilizer. So you're talking through this track about fear. How did you stop that from immobilizing you, or did you?
I guess the story of how that plays out comes on a little later in stuff, but I think a big thing for me is like, I don't know, I always move forward in spite of it. Like, I think that's what courage is, moving forward in spite of doubt, moving forward in spite of fear, moving forward in spite of like, whatever those tensions may be. And so for me, there's a big space of, I will not be overcome. I mean, I'm a 4 on the Enneagram with a 3 wing. And so my 3 wing is like, I'm trying to win. trying to be the top dog, like at all times. And so I refuse to lose. Like I have a winner's mentality in everything. And I guess I won't say in everything, in the things that I care about. Because there's certain things where I'm like, I don't care about being a top dog here. I'm just trying to get out of this. Like, it's like, this isn't what I'm trying to do. And so I'm gonna make my way out of here. Like if I had to work at McDonald's or something like that, I wouldn't care about being the top dog at McDonald's. I care about getting my hours in, getting the money, and then doing what I actually want to do, you know? And so that's, you know, it's like there's sectors of my life where I'm like, you know, I have chosen that I'm going to win here. You know, there was a point where I chose, I want to be a state champion wrestler. And I didn't accomplish that. I was all state, you know, but I didn't get to state champ level, but I shot for it. Like I did everything I could to try to get there. You know, I wanted to, you know, be the valedictorian of my college or whatever. I graduated with a 3.93, but I didn't get to that level, but I shot there, and there came a point where like my priorities kind of changed. And then even within my art, like I want to be, I mean, you know, to steal from Conor McGregor, it's like I in my headspace as an artist, I'm like, I'm not here to take part, I'm here to take over. It's like I'm not trying to just, like, within the lane of the things that I'm doing, I want to be the best. I want to be there's a level of competition that plays itself out for me. And so when it comes to like being defeated by a situation, I just don't want to lose. But that's not to say, I mean, there have been plenty of times where I'm losing. People will see some of that stuff like play out, but I say this to people all the time, obstacles are opportunities to overcome. And so that's how I view stuff. It's like, you know, there's certain things that can't be necessarily defeated, you know, at least within this side of heaven. You know, I can't defeat death. I'm still finna die. Like, you know, in my belief structure, I'm going to live on beyond this. My soul will continue to live, but my earthly body will die. I can't win that fight. And so there's a level of like, you know, succumbing and recognizing that. But then I think also it's just preparing myself. I guess, like, you know, if you think about the story of Joseph in the Bible, and how Joseph sets up the Pharaoh of that time to succeed in the years of famine. Joseph sets him up to say, store away in the years of plenty so that you may reap the harvest in the years of famine and be able to sustain yourselves. And I mean, we see that in COVID, right? It's like a lot of people have realized that they didn't store up in the years of plenty. And so all of a sudden the years of famine are coming around. They don't have an answer. And so people are getting leveled. And so in whatever capacity that looks like, that can be emotionally, that can be friendships, that can be financially, that can be the business, that can be all these different things. I mean, Cheesecake Factory told a bunch of, you know, malls and stuff across the dang country, like, we ain't paying rent this month, we ain't got the money, you know. And so there was a level of that, right? And so for me, it's like, you got to do the work before the stuff hits, right? And then when stuff hits and you can't get out, if you didn't have it, you probably need some help to get out that edge. Like, you ain't gonna be able to do it yourself. Maybe it's supernatural, maybe it's the friends, maybe it's both. Like, you know, maybe it's therapy, maybe it's, you know, there's probably a host of things that it takes to like overcome certain situations. But then it's also like, sometimes there's just like, sometimes you might be afraid of some stuff that's about to really happen. You know, there's a level of like things I can't defeat. Like I said before, but this is a new example. I can't defeat the fact that, you know, police been killing black people forever. You know, I can't defeat the fact that racism is still prevalent. Like, I'm doing everything that I can to deal with systemic oppression. You know, I won't say everything I can, because we talked about that extreme before. I'm not doing everything that I can. I'm not spending every waking minute working towards, you know, these things in totality. But, you know, I'm making efforts to deal with systemic oppression and like things like the court system, mass incarceration, you know, situations like that, you know, deal with racism in personal context and like people that I've been around in the past, or church situations, or you know, what are some other spots, like, you know, racism in workplaces, racism in, you know, school and things like that, like all the different things that, like the different spaces in which those things have developed and stuff, right? It's like I can do work towards those things. I'm doing certain things, but like I also have to realize that that is just still going to happen. And so there's a level like acceptance, I think, that has to come, right, to like recognizing that, yo, you can't change this situation, you can only change your outlook within this situation and keep it moving. Because it's like, again, back to that like perspective that I have of winning. Like, this thing ain't about to beat me. I'm not finna lose nothing. Like, you know, it's just that mindset of like, all right, you can stay in this rut right now, like, or you can get taken out by this joint, but you know, like, or you can figure out a way. You can figure out a different way. It's like, I imagine in that match where I got my behind whooped, I was still just, I probably just kept getting my behind whooped and didn't find a different way out. But like, everybody's beatable, right? And so I could have said, all right, well, figure out this burst of energy, or like go back to the drawing board and figure out a new technique or something like that. But it's like, it's like you can only do so much. Like, there's certain things that are out of your control. Like, when going back to what you talked about in the space of like rape with women, it's like, you can take self-defense classes, you can have pepper spray, have a taser, have these things, but there's a level in which there's some measures of that stuff that's out of your control, and you can prepare as much as you want, but there's a measure of some of that stuff that like you can't keep it from letting you live your life and going out and having fun with your friends. But you can send me your location when you go somewhere and be like, yo, I'm finna be here. If I don't call you in 20 minutes, like something popped off, you need to like make sure that I'm okay, type situation. So it's like, I think that's a lot of what life is like, you kind of just, you set up measures to win, and the things that kind of sit outside of your control, you know, you try to figure out ways to overcome it, you know, whether it's in the moment or afterward, and you kind of move on from there. That's where my headspace sits.
I think mine would be in a similar space. I don't know that I would frame it as like winning per se, but that sport was not big in my life, but like pushing past it, moving past the fear.
Yeah. I think with me, I don't know, I'm definitely like an accomplishment driven individual. Like, in terms of, I don't know, it depends on how I'm defining accomplishment, because within my art, I'm like thinking about accomplishments in the sense of like, I think of accomplishments in the sense of impact. Like, if I'm making significant impact that sees like tangible change, right? And I don't need to necessarily have a bunch of metrics. I just, you know, I can kind of gauge those things within my own head at this point, I think. But yeah, I think there is a measure of like, all right, if I see a photo, I don't care if a photo gets the most likes I've ever gotten on a photo on Instagram. That really doesn't matter to me that much. If I look at a photo, I'm like, that joint is crazy. You know, let's go. You know, if something was to make me a lot of money, like if a photo was to make me a lot of money, I would probably mark that as an accomplished photo or something like that. But even just some of the stories and stuff that come around, you know, different works and things like that, and you know, the stories that people will tell, like those things matter to me. And so there's a level of accomplishment that kind of sits within the motivation, like core motivation type stuff. You know, and I get, yeah, it's a matter of like, how do I question wins, and then like, you know, try to view, you know, nothing as a loss, you know, nothing is losing, like always lessons, always learning from the things that didn't necessarily go my way, the things that fell apart. It's like, all right, you know,
reframing.
Yeah, because there's certain situations where it's like, even with friendships and things like that, where like stuff hasn't played out, you know, and it's just like, all right, you know, it's like, all right, in a situation, if I get like ghosted or something by a homegirl, right? It's like, all right, bet, I think I'm incredible. So, you know, if you,
That you are.
well, thank you. And it's like, I think I'm great. And so if you don't like me, that's on you, cuz. Like, I'm not tripping off that, because I'm not of the mindset of like, what's for me won't miss me type ideology, because I don't think everything happens for a reason. I think that adage is kind of played. But I am very much so, I'm like, many other fish in the sea, you know? And there's way more things, like there's way more things in life than you saying yes to a date or you talking to me or whatever. It's like, if you don't see the worth, like, I ain't trying to convince you that I'm worthy, you know? I'm like, yeah, there's a level of that you're trying to convince someone that, you know, hi, I'm interesting or something when it comes to like dating or whatever. But it's like, I'm not gonna beg you to talk to me. It's like, this is who I am. If you've seen my cards laid out and you've chosen not to keep rocking with me, that's on you, homegirl. Like, I'm also of the mindset of like, soulmates aren't a thing. You know, I just don't.
Same here.
Yeah, as I think you can marry plenty of people. There's plenty of people you can be compatible with.
I was gonna say, I actually don't believe that soulmates aren't a thing. I think that soulmates are something you build. I don't think it's something that's predestined.
Yeah, I mean,
or predetermined. I think you build your soulmate. Because I would say Matthew was my soulmate. That doesn't mean I don't have other soulmates. I don't think that means I don't have other soulmates out there. But to say we weren't connecting for me to say we weren't connecting on a soul level, and for him to be my perfect partner, at least for that time and space, like, would be outrageous to me personally, like, to say that. So I do believe in soulmates. I just believe it's something you build. I don't think we were soulmates when we first met. You know what I mean? It was something we built.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say that's just a healthy relationship. Like, yeah. You know, because I mean, it just goes back, and I guess it's just like different terms for the same thing. But yeah, it's like, for me, so this person, you know, the idea culturally sitting within, there's a person that you're destined to be with or whatever. And so if that person starts tripping, so are you just destined to be with nobody? Or like, you didn't ever find this person? You know, there's so many different choices in life that can be made. It's like, you know, I don't even necessarily like when people are like, God brought me this woman, or God brought me this man, you know, God brought me this person, right? I don't really like that idea, because I'm like, yo, I just think that you could have also asked this other person out and they probably would have been pretty cool too. And you don't really know, you know, what type of relationship or whatever like that could have looked like. And so for me, there's some of those spaces that exist within things. And so, yeah, kind of going back to, you know, there's a level for me where it's just of the mindset, yo, if you don't like me, you know, these are the cards that are laid out upon the table. If you don't like it, cool. Like, let's keep it moving, you know. Best of luck to you, you know, prayers and grace and all that stuff, you know. And then I keep it moving. And so it's like, as I look into life, yeah, I think some of the people who make the most of their lives, and I don't mean that by like financially or, you know, kind of capitalistically driven. I just view that in a life that feels full. I think, you know, a lot of the people who do make the most of their lives have an ability to roll with the punches, you know, have an ability to look at the circumstances that are in front of them and make the best of them. It's like, you spent a good bit of time in Uganda, and I imagine you saw a lot of joy in them children that you didn't even necessarily see from some folk who were in way more, you know, financially, you know, affluent places. or more, you know, kind of industrially developed kind of contexts, you know?
Yeah, for sure I did.
So I feel like some of those spaces are like, those are the spaces where folk get a better understanding. Just, I mean, learn how to live a full life, you know? Just, yeah, it's whatever circumstance that you're in to make the most of it. And I think that that's the reality. I think that's an aspect of overcoming fear in certain capacities or anxieties about certain things. It's like, how can I look at the current hand that I'm dealt and make the most of it, or play it to the best of my ability, and, you know, to do something impactful, or live joyfully, or live thankfully, gratefully, and yeah, and kind of move forward. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Well, I think that's a good spot to kind of close stuff up. Appreciate y'all for watching this episode of Durag Thoughts. If you like this, I guess you can like or subscribe to this. Just keep paying attention to stuff that's coming out. Tune in on Monday for the next episode of the series City of God, and then on Friday, a week from today, tune in again to see the next episode of Durag Thoughts, which is going to be talking about themes and conversations and stuff that surround the piece that will drop on Monday. And I'll catch y'all on the flip. Be easy, be safe, peace.